Chapter 7. Trying not to be envious of the warmth the funeral pyre was providing, Saria rubbed her hands together to keep them warm. She had been sat up in the same tree for the rest of the afternoon, and it was getting colder again. If they were going to head back to the town that night, they would need to go soon. At first she'd thought it likely, but Thorgrim, Jarlen, and Andorn had disappeared inside the tent and not come back out again. Occasionally she heard a clang, but mostly it was quiet. Mira was elsewhere, having wandered off to the other side of the cabin. She occasionally reappeared and checked on the pyre before returning to a post Saria couldn't see. Not long after she had climbed up, Mira had been sent over to the sack Saria had spotted. Andorn had followed a moment later, and they dragged it off into the tent together. For a little while, she had wished she could get down and find out what they'd found, but she couldn't desert her post. Sitting alone for so long had given her some time to think. Not that she'd been particularly lacking that lately, but so much had happened in the last 24 hours that she appreciated a moment of calm. When she'd left her home, she told herself that she'd wander forever and probably alone, that she'd never trust anyone again. But it seemed she might have been wrong. Mira didn't have a deceptive bone in her dragonborn body, and here Saria was, doing what she could to keep herself warm while they tried to work out what was underground. Before she could think anything else or grow annoyed once more, she caught sight of something moving off to the higher end of the forest. Stepping carefully, she got into a better position to see what had caused it. For ages, she saw nothing else but the barren branches blowing in the wind. Whatever had caught her eye, it was either gone or insignificant. Just as she considered shifting back to a more comfortable position, she saw movement again. A man, as disguised as the snowy ground he walked upon, was slowly creeping closer. For a moment she watched as he came nearer, growing bolder. Whoever he was, he spotted their tent and was aware he wasn't alone. But did he know he had been seen as well? Saria knew she had to be careful. Somehow she needed to alert the others that there was danger, but she didn't want to be seen in the process. Was that even possible? Thinking, she tried to decide what to do. All the while, the danger crept closer. As the man seemed to raise some sort of weapon, she knew she was out of time. "Enemy!" Saria yelled as loudly as she could. It drew the man's ire, and within seconds he re-aimed at her, shooting something from a small wand-like object. A shining light, no bigger than a small bird, seemed to rush impossibly fast toward her. It struck her full in the chest, pain almost overwhelming as it sizzled across her like someone had briefly set her heart on fire. Unable to breathe, she reeled backwards and slipped off the branch she stood upon. As a branch whipped across her skin, the sting snapped her back to her senses, and she flailed. Almost miraculously, she managed to grab another, suddenly swinging under it and out the other side. She swung back and forth for a moment, her eyes meeting the man's on more than one occasion. He continued on, clearly trying to find himself somewhere to hide. As the pain in her chest faded, she yelled again. Climbing down to a more stable branch, Saria paused again, unable to see the attacker once more. Andorn appeared a moment later, Mira and Jarlen not far behind. Looking for her, Andorn strode in roughly the right direction anyway. Getting her head back, Saria held up a single finger and then pointed where she had seen the attacker last. As soon as Andorn acknowledged her, she moved to get down, but he held up a hand and made it clear he wanted her to stay there. Frowning, she paused, trying to decide if she truly intended to obey him or not. She wanted to get down and help find the sneak, but equally, she could see his logic in commanding her to stay. From their position on the ground, he would be harder to spot. Trying not to worry about their safety, Saria looked out into the forest. Now and then she glanced to her friends, watching the three of them fan out and move slowly through the forest. Andorn moved the most gracefully, but Mira went quickest, the closest to her. Bit by bit they got farther away, and she didn't see any sign of the attacker again. "Where have you gone?" she asked the air around her, barely speaking louder than a whisper. Of course there was no answer, but it made her feel better all the same. As they went farther, Andorn slowed, and Mira had the good sense to do the same, the distance between all of them growing. When a single bird suddenly fluttered up near Mira, Saria gasped. Not more than 40 feet from her was the sneaking thug. He was looking at Mira, but occasionally glancing towards the tree Saria stood in. Once more she didn't know what to do. If she yelled, it might equally lead to Mira or herself getting hurt again, as it could be helping Mira and alerting her to the danger. But Andorn seemed to also have noticed, as he suddenly changed course and rushed to her side. As the man came even closer, Mira finally caught on and leapt back, snarling her dragon fangs. Of all 3 defenders on the ground, she was the one least likely to be threatened and not have a way of saving herself at short notice. Being able to breathe fire was a definite upside of being Dragonborn. However, deep in the forest as Mira was, a flaming breath could easily backfire. They had not been sent into the forest to burn it down. Instead of breathing fire hard and fast and running a risk, Mira pulled the quarterstaff off her back and immediately cracked the tip down on her assailant's hand. He swore, dropping something. A moment later, Andorn reached her, seeming to understand her need for help long before she even voiced it. His daggers blurred, and between the 2 of them, the sneak had soon been overwhelmed, falling back and trying to run. Saria couldn't let him get away. He would alert others, and she'd never be able to get down from the tree on permanent watch duty. But the man must have either been panicked or disoriented, because he ran almost directly towards her tree. Her fingers found her bow as he came closer and closer, no longer checking if she was still there or not. She took aim as he ran closer, leaving Andorn and Mira behind. Yarlin was gaining on them all, but he wouldn't reach her companion soon enough to join the fight. After taking a deep breath and exhaling it, Saria held her position for just long enough to finish sighting and predicting her mark's next move. She loosed the arrow into the forest, watching it go as it hurtled toward him. These shots were always some of the hardest. She struggled to get right the estimate of where the fleeing person would be by the time the arrow reached them. However, she managed to catch the man's shoulder, sending him spinning over and tipping him into the snow. Mira and Andorn quickly caught up, surrounding the man where he fell and stopping him from rising again under his own steam. Exhaling, Saria sighed with a sort of relief. This extra sneak, especially one so stealthy, had to be important. And he was still alive and might be able to tell them important things. But she'd only just thought this when he tried to move again, launching himself at Mira. He grabbed her arm, twisting it. She screamed as something snapped. Leaping to her defense, Andorn ran the brute through. Less than a second later, his body fell back to the ground, the eyes expressionless, the soul gone to whatever afterlife followed one of his nature. For a moment, Saria could only watch as Andorn stripped the man of anything particularly precious and then looked up to her. Within seconds, he was beckoning for her to come back down. She sighed and winced as the movement made her body ache where she'd been struck. She wasn't even sure what she'd been struck with. Maybe one of the others would know. She hoped so. It was something she planned to avoid in the future. It didn't take her long to get back down to the ground. Jumping the last bit, she landed in a small snowdrift, letting it soften a longer drop than normal. It took her a moment to get back to her feet and brush the snow off. But she soon reoriented herself and headed to find Andorn. Yarlin and Mira were still with him, the pair of them already dragging the body away. "We're creating far more bodies than I like," Andorn said as he noticed her eyes following. She couldn't help it. It had been a long time since she'd seen so much death. Death shouldn't come to people too readily. "No," she replied, thinking of the last time she'd seen lots of dead bodies, and what she'd been told when she'd queried the sense of it all. "It shouldn't. But if we hadn't killed them, they would have killed us. And I'd like to think our reasons are noble." Her words made Andorn chuckle, the sound as dark as before. "Not your words, I think. You've seen some death before." Nodding, she offered no explanation. Thankfully, he didn't ask for one. "It will be the last one for a while. All the tracks are accounted for now, and he was in charge here. We'll only have more visitors if his contact grows suspicious." "So what now?" she asked, aware he'd been keeping stuff from them. "Two things. We open up that thing in the ground, and we go back to town." Andorn walked off, heading for the tent. Saria frowned at the sudden movement that left her behind, but hurried to catch up. "They were looking for what we found, weren't they?" she asked. "Perhaps. They were looking for something." The bag the earlier men were carrying had some heavy-duty equipment in it, but not all of it is useful for excavating. I think they also had other plans. "And we need to find out what, and the mayor needs to know there's a bigger threat."
"And I need more supplies if I'm going to get this open,"
Thorgrim added as he came back.
"Supplies only the temple can provide. I'll need to head back as well."
"Then it looks like Yarlin and I are staying here." Andorn grinned. Yarlin scowled.
"Why doesn't our dragon lady stick it out here?"
the sailor replied, his eyes blazing.
"Because I need to get us some more food and another pipe to get this stove working properly. If we give you money for all that, you'll spend it on ale, and we'll all go cold for a lack of a working stove to keep us warm and food in our bellies."
Mira replied. Again, Andorn chuckled, and even Saria smiled to herself. Yarlin rolled his eyes and wandered toward the hut, muttering, "Go now, and come back as soon as you have what you need," Andorn said as he held out a money pouch to Thorgrim. "There should be enough in there for everything we need."
"I'm hoping not to have to pay much for supplies from the temple. They have an obligation to help me lift curses that can harm innocents. And with the mayor requesting I help them, I imagine I can offer a suitable exchange of my time once this is all over."
"Nifty," Mira replied.
"Let's go then. I'm tired, and I want to get this whole thing done and dusted. Good luck guarding this cold, frozen bit of forest," she replied, grinning at Andorn as she stalked off. Andorn and Thorgrim both shook their heads as they walked in opposite directions, the latter following Mira past the hut and back towards the road. After mirroring their body language, amused at herself for doing so, and amused at all the antics, Saria followed. She had definitely found a very interesting set of adventurers to tag along with for a while.